Hello everyone, and this is BioPhoenix here, and today we're taking a look at the second game in the Akudaikan series. Yes, the same series that copied a lot of stuff from one of my all-time favorite ones, being the Deception series from the company Tecmo. And as I'm talking about it, I'm gonna let the intro play because, well, it quite possibly is one of the greatest openings to any video game ever made. So the game was developed and published by Global A, and it was released in 2003 on the PS2 and only in Japan. And since it has been a couple years since I covered the first game, I'll go over a little bit of a recap. So you play as this fat tyrant guy where everyone hates him and wants to kill him, but he ends up getting a ton of money and ends up using it to defend himself by setting up a bunch of traps and try to kill all the people that are trying to assassinate him. So also just like the Deception series, you also play as a bad guy, but only that the tone in this one was a lot more goofier, and of course with the whole like live action cutscenes, it definitely does make things very funny. And my overall thoughts on the first game, in case you haven't seen the video, was that I did enjoy the game, but it did have its flaws, but I did thought that it was a pretty fun game that also did have some pretty interesting aspects that I wasn't expecting for a Deception style game. And I find the whole, like, trap creation thing, like, really could be its own genre, for that there's, like, barely any other games that play like this, and it's really hard to narrow it down to a single genre that I can think of. Like, the closest one would probably be, like, a strategy game. So let's go take a look and see exactly what Akudaikan did compared to the first one. So the menu in this one looks a lot cooler, for that you actually get to see this whole, like, first-person view of, like, a bedroom or something. I do like that. And the different options you have here is obviously like the main story mode where you get to do all the missions, then there's also a store where you get to buy like traps and other items, and then there's also the equipment section, and finally there's also options. So when you boot up a mission, you'll be able to do the prep time stage, which allows you to set up your traps and all your combos, and also get to set up your bodyguards as well, and you have to do it all in a time limit, but I feel like they do give you a good amount of time. And once that's over, the invaders will try to come in and try to kill you, but the traps do not activate until they see you. And the traps activate automatically whenever they walk over, like, the activation key. And one interesting improvement that I do like about this one is that, yes, they did brought back the melee attacks, but the good thing about them in this one is that you can actually get way more weapons. Because in the first game, all you had was just a dinky sword, and it just really sucked. Well, in this one, you can actually get a lot more variety, where you can actually get guns, you can get, like shurikens, you can get, like, spikes that you throw on the ground, and you can also get some, like, over-the-top ones, too. And yes, these weapons are a lot better, but of course, to make things fair though, the gun for an example, you only have like a limited amount of ammo, so you can't use it like all the time and just kill people with just that. So it is recommended to use the traps, but at least they did give you something that is better than just a shitty dinky sword with like the awful hit detection. And speaking of other items, in this one there seems to be a lot more equipable stuff like that you can equip to your character. And some of them you unlock just by completing the missions, and some of them you have to buy, and then there are some that I'm not even sure how to unlock them, and I couldn't find any guides online, so unfortunately I can't really say much on that. But there is one good thing I can say about the store in this game, is that at least you can actually see what the fuck you're buying, because in the first game, everything was all text, and yeah, I know, like, I can't read this shit because I can't read Japanese, but even if I could read it though, it was still, like, just not a really good, like, representation. Like, it was just kind of boring looking, where at least in this one, I can at least see what the trap looks like and how I know it can actually be worth it or not. Also, I think there is a lot more bodyguards in this one. I don't remember there being that many in the first game, and in this one, they have a fair amount of them. But unfortunately, just like the first game though, I do find that the bodyguards in this game tend to get in your way some of the time, so, you know, it is recommended that if you do want to utilize them, you gotta make sure you put them in an area where they're, like, not, like, in the way of any of your other traps, because they can actually set them off. But I have a feeling that some of the ones that I did not unlock probably are a lot more useful, for that they might actually do some decent damage to them. So far, this may sound like the game's already a pretty big improvement, but there is one thing I haven't went over yet, is that the frickin' minigames in this game. Yes, this game actually has a lot more minigames than in the first one. So this one still brought back that one where you gotta unravel the girl's Komodo, but in this one though, it actually is a lot more funnier, for that you can actually have to like drag like one of like the people out from the background to the foreground, and yes, you can actually get one of these sumo wrestlers, and it's just really funny. And the next one is a quiz game that plays exactly like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and it's pretty amusing, but unfortunately I can't read Japanese, so it was basically unplayable for me, so I had to like guess my way through. But the good thing is that you don't have to fully complete it or anything. You can still just like fail miserably, and you can still continue on to the next stage. You just have to like activate it once. But because of my curiosity with this game's weirdness, I really wanted to see what would happen if you did complete it, so yeah, I ended up using save states in case I got an answer wrong because, well, like I said, I just wanted to see through it. I also did the same thing for the next minigame, and that happens to be a matching card game, and this matching card game is unlike anything else that I've ever played, because this is by far the weirdest part of this game. So what happens here is that the two characters end up tying up this ninja chick, who happens to be the same one within the quiz minigame, and whenever you get a matching pair right, you end up getting a cutscene where they're basically like tormenting her in a very humiliating way. And this is just one example that I'll give that is just so ridiculous that I couldn't help but laugh. Oh man, you know, like, this is the type of shit I live for. And then the final minigame was one I was definitely not expecting whatsoever, and that happens to be a freaking shoot 'em up. Yeah, they made a shoot 'em up minigame into this, although, I will say, the shoot 'em up section in this is not really the most exciting thing ever. Like, they didn't even make the background move at all. It's just a static image. It looks really low budget. But, you know, the fact that they even bothered to put something, like, so ridiculous like this in this game, I gotta give them credit for even trying. So yeah, that's all the crazy ridiculous mini-games that they have into this one. So now, let's get right into the game's controls. And the controls in this one are exactly like the first one, so there's really not a whole lot I can really say that's different about this one. And they do feel pretty good in this one, and yeah, I do find that even like the hit detection on like the dinky sword in this one is also a bit better, but it's still not like the greatest thing ever though. And yeah, there's really not a whole lot of buttons you really need to worry about. Like on the face buttons, you can actually like make different types of yelling sounds where you can either lure the enemy towards you or you can get them away from you for a couple seconds. So yeah, I really don't want to like repeat everything I said from the first game, but yeah, like I said, very simple to understand. Even if you can't read this shit, it's really easy. And as for the game's graphics, well, the graphics in this one are way better than the first game, because in the first game, I complained that they looked way more like a PS1 game, more so than they looked like a PS2 game. But this one actually does look like a PS2 game. Maybe not like an amazingly great PS2 game, but it at least looks like one. Like for one, like not only is like the backgrounds look a lot nicer, the character models like look a lot better and they have more animations to them. And also like I noticed there's a lot more animations in the background too. Like in the first stage, you can actually see like fish swimming in the water. Like I just thought seeing that was just really cool. And I have to say that when it ends the prep stage and the invaders arrives, it plays a cutscene that whenever your assistant character will knock on the door and he ends up interrupting the main character and some chick or like, you know, like fooling around or whatever, and it's always funny, and there's always like different situations that are going with it that always make me laugh. And one thing that is kind of weird and funny to me, well, it's probably just me that thinks of this, is that whenever the main character ends up like getting mad and he has like that explosion thing happening in the background, like he's pissed, I don't know why, but the way how he looks like in this shot is that I can just see him looking like King DDD. I don't know why, I just kind of get that vibe off of him.
Need a monster to clobber that there Kirby!
And as for the live-action cutscenes in this game, yeah, just like the first game, they are really hilariously weird, and I love them. And yes, this game, as you can tell, is way more crazier than the first game, just given that whole intro I just showed you. But one thing I do have to comment on with this one is that you notice that there's like this like ninja guy, and it seems like they just pay like no attention to him. Don't you think he looks kind of familiar at all? Yeah, he kind of looks like Angry Joe. Is this what he did before he went onto YouTube? But yeah, overall, these live-action cutscenes are completely bonkers, and I love them. And the overall graphics are a really big improvement from the first game. I still wouldn't say like it's like a greatly amazing looking game, but I do think that it is a pretty good looking game. So that's all well and good. And as for the game's music, the music in this one, I think is also like a big improvement over the first one. The first one's music I also really liked, but the thing was, there wasn't like a lot of variety with it, and in fact there was a lot of songs that you just heard like over and over, but in this one, there seems to be a lot more variety with it, and I actually really like pretty much all the songs in it. It's just too bad I can't find any of them online. But it does have a similar vibe to the first one, where, you know, it kind of has that quirky, fast-paced sounding, like, Japanese traditional style music, and it's kind of catchy. So yeah, I really do like this one, and I would consider it to be a pretty underrated OST. And before we move on to the next section, there was actually one thing I did find out about that I thought was interesting, and this is something I definitely did not mention in the first game, was that I actually found out who the actor was that played the main character of this game. He is played by someone named Kaihei Senbonmatsu. It was pretty tricky to find out exactly what other roles he did, but the only thing that I was able to somewhat recognize was that he actually played in one of the Power Ranger series, or should I say the Super Sentai, because, you know, it was the Japanese version. The one he played in was the 24th series that came out in the early 2000s, and it was called Mirai Sentai Time Ranger. And he happened to play one of the main bad guys of the series called Don Dolnaro. So for anyone out there who is, like, really huge in the whole, like, Super Sentai stuff, then this does make for some pretty interesting trivia. Also, one other thing I can say about the acting in this game is that one of the characters you get to fight, he's this general guy, and he actually speaks in English, although he speaks in, like, really broken English that's hard to understand, but it's pretty damn funny.
I'll blast up and tear up the magistrate pieces to pieces.
So yeah, as you guys noticed, the acting in this game is completely ridiculous, but rightfully so, because I think it was made to be like that on purpose, and besides, wouldn't you want this thing to be boring and bland? Like, no, of course you wouldn't. Alright, now if you want to go out and buy yourself a copy of this game, there's not a whole lot of copies on this one online that I've seen, and the very few that are, believe it or not, cost $69. Yeah, I'm not joking about that. There literally is a bunch of copies that are $69. And there is even a sealed one going for about $105, so yeah, unfortunately this one's a lot more expensive, because I do remember the first one was actually really cheap. But then again, I did review it before everything went to shit in 2020, so maybe things just changed over a while. I don't know. But either way, though, if you do want to play this one without paying for those stupid prices, the game does emulate really damn well. So now, as my overall thoughts on this game, is Akudaikan 2 better than the first game? Damn straight it is. This game is just way better than it in, like, almost every way. There is maybe only, like, two things about it that I don't like as much. So the first thing that I don't like as much is that the camera constantly follows the invader as he's like walking through the whole stage. Now, yeah, it's helpful to kind of see exactly where he's like going, but at the same time though, it also is kind of annoying to move around when like you can't even see your own character. So you have to like move around by like looking at like the icon on your map, and it's just kind of annoying. So yeah, I really wish it was more like the first game, where it constantly shows your character moving around and then you have to look at like the map for your enemy, and then when you just see him on the screen and whatnot. And the other thing I don't think is as good as the first game is that there's not nearly as much stages. Yeah, in this game there's only like 15 stages within the whole game, where in the first one I think there was about like 20 something. I don't remember the exact number, but I know there was a lot more. But aside from these two things though, this game is just a huge improvement, and I think it's a lot more fun. For that, it really does add a lot of flair and replay value to the game. And plus, I think the game is just way more ridiculous and just way more funnier. And they pretty much kept everything else that worked and just, you know, like I said, made it improved more, and they made it look better and sound better. The only thing that is still a problem with both games, and this isn't a huge flaw, but it is something that is slightly annoying, is that sometimes, like, the way how, like, the enemies will, like, walk in a certain path, and you set your trap combination in a certain way, if they walk in, like, a direction that you weren't expecting them to walk through, it can totally ruin your whole, like, trap strategy combination thing. and doing the whole prep time with the way how you set up traps does get a little bit repetitive, having to do that at the beginning of every mission over and over again. And of course, if you do die on a mission, you also have to redo it all over, which, like I said, can be a little bit annoying. But aside from these minor things though, I really do think that not only is this a good game, but I also would say that this series is actually a lot of fun, and I would actually recommend it to most people. Well, most people that are okay with some ridiculous shit, that is. Because yes, I do think that this is like a really interesting little competition we got here between this and the Deception series. And well, yeah, the Deception series is still the king of it because I still think they are the best, but I still think that this is still a pretty worthy contender. Then again, I mean, like, what other contenders are there? But with the second game out of the way, I can say that it's slowly inching its way forward to being up there with some of my lesser favorite games within the Deception series, which are still great, by the way. And hopefully one day that this game may get a fan translation, at least I really hope so, because I really do think that this game is worth playing if, like I said, if you're like me and you love the Deception series and you want more of it, then yeah, this will definitely scratch that itch. Or if you just want some, like I said, a ridiculous, like, hilarious-ass game. And hopefully soon, I'll be able to play the third and final game of the series so far, which is also on PS2, being Akudaikan 3. And I also did mention in the first video that there is also 2 spin-offs on the PSP, but they play very differently though. So yeah, as someone who loves the shit out of the Deception series, and with this series slowly becoming also a pretty big favorite, I can say that this one is a worthy contender. So with that said, thanks for watching and commenting, and have yourselves a great day.